Hello, and welcome to Trading Without Fear. So, with you being a football player, was there any sort of habits that you carried over into your trading? I've heard of a lot of people who's either professional athletes or even athletes in high school. They find it easier to actually develop better habits in trading a lot faster than maybe somebody who wasn't an athlete or even a musician or something like that when they were younger.
Yeah, I think the biggest attribute from football, and of course, like Randy House says, there's not a lot of things you can bring into trading that are going to benefit you. But I do think um, my ability to schedule my day. When you're a student athlete, you have a very regular schedule.
Yeah,
You're up before class, you're training, working out, you're going to class, you're doing film study throughout the day. Then
yeah,
at the end of the day, you have your regular practice, then your film study, then you have study hall. And so once I found trading, it was something that I could get back into a routine for and really prep for. So the idea of really focusing my life around it and making it something that um, everything that I do can go towards my improvement for this one thing. It really
yeah.
kind of sparked something in me. And it was a fire that I hadn't had since I left football. So I'm very thankful for that. But yeah, discipline as far as scheduling my day would be a huge one. And also the execution on seeing and believing what you see. At my position as a defensive back, you have to be able to not only read, what the linemen are doing to understand if it's a run or a pass, but you
Yeah.
also have to be able to read anywhere from the receiver's feet to their position on the field to try to get a jump on what routes they may run. And if you make a mistake, the band's playing. And so that
Yeah.
one mistake and da 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 da,
Yeah.
they're shooting off the cannon, they're celebrating. So I think that helped is being able to be disciplined with saying, okay, that is what I'm looking for, and that's it. I'm going to execute on it. Versus, oh, this is a route, a slant route. Then they run a slant and go. If you're familiar with that, and
Yeah.
had me jump a short route, and they're going long. So those two things are some of the biggest things that I believe athletics kind of brought to my trading career that I've been able to benefit from.
Yeah, I totally feel you on that. When time management is something I learned from high school wrestling as well. Like you said, you have to wake
Awesome.
up. Like I was going to practice like 5 o'clock in the morning. By the time you're
Yeah.
done with practice at night, it's like 7 o'clock at night. So planning out your day and having proper time management for the sport that you love is a really good, like it carries over to not just trading but also other aspects of your life. And so when you were in football, did you ever like learn any sort of techniques as far as keeping yourself calm during a play or before a play, or like helping with nervousness or anything like that? Let's say you at the 50-yard line, it's got a couple of seconds left on the clock. Did you ever have to like learn how to manage your feelings while you're in that play during football? And did you ever carry that over to trading or other aspects of your life?
Yeah, that's a great question. And one thing before that is I know that, it's probably helpful for you because as a wrestler, you have to have body discipline too, when you're
Yeah,
cutting and making weight. So that's something huge because we have to be to be emotionally set for the market. We have to have our body in a certain condition. We have to be hydrated. We have to be rested. We have to eat. So I can imagine wrestling helping with that.
yeah,
As far as just those big moments, the times where, you might be one-on-one with a wide receiver and it's in a clutch situation. The biggest thing I would say is understanding that practice makes permanent. And
yeah.
so
So true.
if you practice all week the way you're going to play, then you know that you're going to have it not only in your mind, but you're going to have that cellular memory and your
Yeah,
body's going to be ready to execute, which is important when you're tired. And of course, we don't trade when we're tired, but in sports and wrestling, you're going to get tired, right? But you
yeah,
still have to execute with your mind, even though you have a tired brain. So once I was able to get away from experimentation, and of course, you have to get to a point where you're confident in what you're doing. If not, I
yeah,
say, take every trade, try everything, every hunch, go with it. But once you start cutting down the fat, you have to stick to it. You have to say, you know what? I am not going to be curious, even if I think I'm getting away with it by switching to my fifth sim account and trying it out.
yeah,
Um, don't do it. Stay disciplined because that practice is going to seep in. Those bad habits, they seep in. And if you are disciplined with this is how I do it 100% of the time at those big moments in the market and now those big moments in the game, it just was a deeper level of memory and execution that
yeah.
can arise at that point.
Now, with muscle memory, when it comes down to like football and wrestling and other sports, uh, is there ever a time that you're looking at a trade without even like, I don't know if you are the type of trader who looks at the news and other type of things before you actually trade, but you look at the chart and you're like, hey, that's my ideal setup. You don't even really have to think about it. You just execute the trade.
Right.
Uh, like those type of behavior patterns and stuff like that to me is more of a mental memory of going, I've seen this enough, I recognize it enough, and you can just execute without thinking of it. And some people would call that intuition. I just consider that more of a mental memory of saying I've seen this enough.
For sure.
I find that people, either athletic or even maybe played instruments, they have that kind of muscle memory that's ingrained into their mental aspect of their trading as well, where they can, maintain discipline by going, hey, I know I can cut my losses here because I'm confident in who I am. And, as traders, some traders will try to trade to develop confidence when we're supposed to be a confident trader, which is understanding, knowing that we know what we're going to do next based off of whatever the outcome of the market. If the market goes
Right.
against you, you're confident enough that you can catch your trades. If it's going up in your favor, you're confident to take profits when you're supposed to. So when you're like trading and stuff, and you have that kind of mental memory is what I call it. Is there other things that you start to notice, like breathing exercises or things like that, that kind of help, make it more aware of what's going on in the markets? I've heard of, I think as yourself, that was also talking about like, you know, deep breathing versus shallow breathing. Can you go a little bit more into
Yeah.
depth about how that actually affects your mental state of mind in the markets?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So it's all tied in, and you kind of hit it on the nail with your explanation there. I believe individuals who play instruments and do things like that, they have worked their ability to take information and plant it into their subconscious mind, and that's
Hmm.
kind of like the information that you were talking about. Um, our body is, and this is something that you learn in NLP, because NLP is the language of action. Our body wants to take things from the conscious and it wants to take them to the subconscious, and it can only do that through programming and repetition. So
Yeah,
once you have something that is deep inside you, your body's going to perform it. It's just
yeah,
like, if you're a fighter, if you're a runner, or if you're someone that's going to freeze, you don't have to think about that, when a situation gets a little hazy, right? You just automatic, oh, that's a dog, I'm going to run, or oh, I'm going to freeze up. Whatever it
yeah,
is inside of you, it's going to be innate. So when we are able to get these habits to that level, um, it's going to be like intuition. It's going to feel just like intuition, because our body is going to be ready to perform those. And that is actually, in our cells is where that bodily memory is stored,
hmm,
as well, through studies in quantum physics. But the big thing is, as far as your question, is that breathing allows us to stay away from the reptilian brain in that fight or flight stance. So we can stay more conscious, and that way we can do things that are more empowering for us. When we're not breathing, and this is the saying, shallow breathing is shallow thinking. Anytime you're
yeah,
breathing, high chest, upper chest, frantic, your mind is going to be in that exact same state. So the best way to calm yourselves is with shallow breathing, deep in the belly, all the way up. I remind myself to do that every day on a daily, basis. I also have breathing exercises. I like to do what I call box breathing. I do it pretty much every morning, and that just trains you to breathe like that. And it's just about forming habits. If you're a shallow breather or a mouth breather, it's just a habit. And
yeah,
it's something you have to work on. And if you're not used to breathing deep, you're not used to thinking deep. And so when anything kind of throws you off, it's going to allow emotions to take over. So you have to have deep breathing, not only when you're in the market, but outside the market, to form that habit, but also when you're on the charts, to just be in a better emotional state. So you can allow the things that you've learned to come through. If
yeah.
not, panic's going to set in. And from that panic, our body's going to go into a protection mode. And like Mark Douglas and Paula T always talk about, sometimes that protection mode means blowing the account,
Yeah,
because blowing an account is just an easy way to get out of that emotion as winning the trade. Your body
yeah.
doesn't know the difference, right? So, so it's going to react there. So yeah, we have to have some kind of breathing exercises, and we have to bring that into the market as well, just to be in peak mental state.
So, like when you're saying that, I'm thinking of people that maybe have a panic attack or some sort of anxiety. One of the common issues for a lot of traders is having FOMO when they see a stock that has a potential to run or it is currently running. Especially early on in my trading career, I recognized that my breathing would be a little bit faster, and I just kind of panic and get into the trade. So,
Yeah.
being aware of how you're breathing also allows you to be aware of not only like your feelings, but also helps calm you down. It makes you think clearer, which is totally great advice. Of like, if I'm breathing really shallow and I'm breathing really quickly, maybe it's because I'm anxious to do something that I shouldn't be doing. And for
Right.
me, a lot of trading errors come down to a way that we protect ourselves from something that happened to us in our past. If we're in a
Right.
trade, for instance, and the stock is coming down and it's going to get us stopped out, and we decide either pull our stop or execute our mental stop, there's the reason why we're doing that is protection ourselves from something maybe trading related or maybe not trading related, but it's a form of trying to take us out of emotional pain.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
problem with the market is as it keeps going further and against you, that emotional pain comes to the point of where you almost kind of like having a stack of bills that you haven't paid for, you kind of put it into an area where you avoid it, and that turns into
Right.
an avoidance. So I
Yeah.
think a lot of the behaviorals that people have and the reasons why they do that is because other emotional pains that they're trying to deal with outside of the market.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with that, and a lot of that can happen, from the time that we're a child.
Yeah,
Eckhart Tolle talks about building the ego, and once we understand our name, that becomes a box. And
yeah,
so the second that I said I am Jason, then I started to associate. Okay, well, Jason is this. Jason is this height. Jason is this gender. Jason is this race. And so all of that stuff over time becomes baggage, and it definitely is a filter to affect how we act.
yeah,
One thing about what you said when we have that shallow breathing is we're going back to how we're innately made. So if we're in, caveman days and we're focusing on the most primitive, oldest part of our brain, which we still have today, and there's a rustling in the bushes, it's not the time for our brain to be looking at the beautiful butterflies and the flowers. It's zoomed in on what's in the bushes. Is there a tiger coming out and what? So
yeah,
we're focusing on what we don't want. So when we have that breathing in the market, there's times where people go into slump because of emotions, and they're always doing the exact opposite of what they should be doing, right? They're
yeah,
like, man, everything I do is like the opposite. Maybe I should try to do the opposite, just to see if it's going to work. And that's because our brain is narrowed down and focused on the threat, right?
yeah.
So if that profit is moving the other way, if there's a candle that we shouldn't be entering on, that's the threat. That's what we're going to be focused on at the time. And the only way to, overcome that is to have a conscious mind, which is foundationally built with the breathing.
Yeah, I've totally been there. Like Mark Douglas says that fear causes us to narrow focus of attention onto the object of our fear until we cause the
Right.
very thing that we try to avoid. And early on in my trading career, there was a time where I was like doing everything, and then my wife was like, "Hey, maybe you should do the exact opposite of what you think you want to
Right.
do." And I would do that, and it worked until what I wanted to do was no longer like it was the opposite of what I wanted to do at that point. I don't know if that makes sense,
No,
but
totally.
it totally makes sense of where you're focusing on, let's say, the upticks when you're in a losing trend, and instead of actually recognizing, hey, I'm losing money, I'm downtrending, you start focusing on, hey, that candle went up, maybe it's going to keep going up. And
Right.
so thinking back to my own trading, there's times where I'll be like, even holding your breath is a kind of way of avoiding emotional pain. So
Oh
not just
yeah.
quick breathing. If you're like to hold a breath because it dropped down too quickly, the stock went
Hmm.
too against you, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like it kind of takes your breath away in a way. So
Right.
when you're
Very
doing
true.
those type of exercises, you're mentioning that you're doing some before market and during market. How do you normally try to get yourself in the habit of doing that so that way it's second nature, or are you still developing that the habit of being second nature to breathing a certain way during your trading?
I think at this point, after because I was breathing way before I was trading, just for mental health, it's
Hmm.
kind of a practice that I see just as important as my daily meditation.
Hmm.
Meditation all day, every day. I'm going to do it. Breathing exercises may miss out a few days depending on schedule, but it's probably second tier, to being what's important to me to do on a daily basis. So it's something you have to build up. I think once you practice the habit outside of the market, your body's going to refer to it in those times. And
Hmm.
so it's about pushing the stress line back. I know that what breathing exercises have done for me is that, when you're doing, let's say a box breathing, that's what one of my favorites outside of fire breathing. A box breathing means you're breathing for the exact same amount of time in a square. So I'm going to hold my breath for, let's say, 10 seconds. I'm going to exhale for 10 seconds. I'm going to hold with an empty lungs for 10 seconds, and then I'm going to inhale for 10 seconds. So that's
Hmm.
going in a box there. Now, depending on, where you are lacking in breathing, you're going to struggle. And if anyone's listening wants to try this, I would suggest starting with, just 5 seconds, which has its own challenges. But when you're at 10 seconds, you're going to realize that at 8, 7 seconds, whatever that time is, your body's going to start to freak out. You're going to
Yeah.
start to feel something that's pushing you, saying, "Hey, man, we're dying here. We need to breathe." Now, I'm not giving medical advice. I don't think anyone could die at 10 seconds though, because you can always open your mouth. But again, I'm not a doctor. But that line of when the body wants to take over control, that's our threshold line. And you can consciously see it do breathing exercises. And the more you start to hold your breath longer, doing things like Wim Hof, things like box breathing, you push back that fight or flight response. It's
Hmm.
it's right at that cap where, if you are doing box breathing for 10 seconds and you notice it's 7 seconds of holding your breath with an empty lungs, the body starts to take over. You start to feel that throbbing, which you'll understand, when you try it, it's 7 seconds. Okay, that throbbing's coming in. After about a month, you're like, all right, I'm at 10 seconds. You'll know for sure that that line is pushed back, and that will equate to your stress in the market. So, you may be stressed out with a certain event in the market, and then all of a sudden it's just gone away. You're like, oh, I can handle that now. And so breathing is really key to giving your capacity for stress in the market a lot better. One side note on that I want to talk about is because another thing that helps with stressors is understanding that we need to grow beyond stress versus dissipate energy for stress. And breathing is something that does that versus I'm stressed, I'm going to do something to get rid of this energy.
Hmm.
And when we do that, that's what they call it, in quantum physics, dissipation. So alcohol, sex, drugs, exercise. When we're really stressed out, bad day at work, one of those things are usually what we're going to do. But if you can do breathing exercises at that moment when you're most stressed, if you can meditate at that moment when you're next stressed, according to the second law of thermodynamics, we have the opportunity to experience what is a quantum leap to a non-linear level. And when I say non-linear, that means that our system, the open system of the body, can handle the stress better than it could before, right?
Okay.
So as you're going at a linear level, that means I can handle a little bit of stress here, a little bit of stress here. But a quantum shift means that that stress no longer reaches that capacity. So I see all stress as an opportunity. Breathing exercises when you're feeling stress is going to be huge. If you're someone who is listening and someone who has a lot of stress in their life, try doing box breathing at the peak of that stress, and you're going to realize that the same things that were catalysts to you are going to not be catalysts in the further weeks as you build this into your habit. So you're outgrowing the stressors, and that always equates back to the market, to what you can handle. So it's pretty awesome. Breathing exercises are awesome. I can't say enough about that.
Yeah, that's really good advice because I'm the type of person like when I started trading before, I didn't have a child, and now I have a 1.5
Yeah,
year old, and so now I feel
that's
like I have no time to do anything. So I feel like I'm
I
always
bet.
stressed because I'm always like trying to catch up to things that I need to do, and so I'm definitely going to be trying these different breathing exercises. You mentioned meditation earlier, and I've heard of a lot of other traders also mention how meditations really helped with their trading. Um, for somebody like myself, I couldn't really understand how meditation works or how to do it properly. So with people who's watching it that they want to try meditation, like where do you even start? Like how do you actually start doing meditation? How do you know if it's worthy, not necessarily working, but you're actually deriving benefit? And what type of meditations do you normally do?
Great question. So let me talk about the benefits of meditation, because I think when we have tangible benefits and we can kind of track them,
Hmm.
um, it makes us a little more motivated to do it. So two big things as far as trading is related with meditation. One, you're taming a beast. Our body, a lot of times when we don't act in our own best interest, we click and we do something like, man, why did I do that? And we just have that single lapse of judgment where we did something that wasn't in our own best interest. Now, with meditation, the urge for the mind to take over, same way with breathing, is going to be there. With breathing, it's a little more survival stress based.
Hmm.
In meditation, it's ego based.
Yeah.
And from the mind's perspective, When it's not thinking, it's dead, right? So it's always going to be fighting us having a quiet mind because it's fighting for its life, literally, from its perspective, which it can't get outside of thinking. It is, it is what it is for it's a organ for what it is, and it can't think outside of that. So when we're
Yeah.
trying to shed it off, it's like, hey, I'm not going to die. And so we become in a battle with ourselves. And the worst part about that is we know ourselves very well. And so when you're meditating, and I suggest starting with either an assisted meditation, which is what I use, a program called HoloSync I've been doing since about 2008. It sends brain waves into your mind. And by doing an assisted meditation, your brain is going to be where it needs to be as far as the brainwave function that you're trying to train, no matter what, right? So you don't have to really focus on what your mind's doing. The only thing caveat about that is that when you're doing assisted meditations and using binaural beats, it's pushing things out of you rapidly more than you naturally would. So you're going to have a lot of what we call upheaval, which means that you're going to be meditating with binaural beats, and then you're going to have this energy that you have to get rid of. Then you're going to be like, man, the crying babies just bother me today more than it usually does, or I was a little bit short at work. So you have to watch out about that when you're doing assisted meditations, because it's pushing things out of you rapidly. The second part about meditation, outside of just taming the beast and making sure that that mind isn't trying to fight us to not die, is that we are getting control over ourselves. And so, in order for us to act in our own best interest in the market, we have to be able to control our body. And when that mind wants to say, get up, you left the stove on, hold on, you got to check an email, when it's trying all of these tricky things just based on what it knows will get you up and moving, it's
Mhm.
taking control over. And that same lack of control is going to happen in the market where you say, you know what, I know what to do, but I just can't do it. And so meditation is going to be us gaining control over our mind. I guess I said the same thing twice, but two things. One, our actions, so our mind doesn't take over. And the second thing is the mind chatter, which I think I kind of convoluted there. So two things meditation does: it helps us control ourselves so we can act in our own best interest, and it stops the mind chatter. When you lose a trade and your mind says you suck, you're never going to be successful at this, those are things that meditation will eventually dissipate. One thing that, as we talked about, coming into this show, was how do we make changes once we have a list of things that really don't serve us, right? Once
Yeah.
we know who we are, and it comes to knowing who you are. So once you can say, you know what, I know who I am by either writing down the things that we hate, or just seeing, you know what, I'm not a trader that gets out of the trade too early. Once we've identified these things, meditation is going to clear the slate, right? It's going to allow us to get back to a natural state of thinking, which is non-thinking. And it's going to allow us to, from one end, say, okay, I'm clearing the slate. However, when you clear the slate, you have a vacuum, those old habits are going to rush back in. So the second part of that is having a clear, concise vision of the trader that we want to be. And
Mhm.
meditation is going to be huge for that, because that's really one of the best ways to change our habits. And so when we're able to meditate, tame our beast, and say, I control this, I don't need you, one, telling me negative things in my head, and I also don't
Mhm.
need you taking over my actions. So I'm not acting in my own best interest. And so with meditation, 2 minutes starting, if you're not using a assisted meditation, and you're going to hear that mind fight, and it's clever. It's going to know exactly what it needs to say to you to get you to stop.
Yeah.
Oh, is the door locked? Oh, wait, was that a knock? Is your phone off? Like all of these creative things. And it's going to have new things every single day to make sure that it does exactly what it needs to do to get you to move so it doesn't die. So it's a fun game if you look at it that way. But really, you're taming yourself, so you can control your actions, and you're also helping yourself so you can have more empowered thinking.
Yeah. So when you're talking about assisted meditations, I'm familiar with binaural beats and how that
Yeah.
works. The only other assisted meditations that I've seen are like the ones that's like breathe in, breathe out,
Oh,
let
yeah.
your feet
Yeah. That as
relax.
well.
So is HelloSync, is that a combination of the voice trying to tell you like action steps to do, such as, breathe in, relax this part of your body, breathe out, along with binaural beats, or something similar to that? Or how does that HelloSync work in case people want to go and search that? And I'll
Yeah.
get the link and put it below as well.
Yeah, so it's only, and I'm glad you brought that up because there are two forms of assisted. HoloSync is only assisted with the brain waves, so they're
Hmm.
taking you to a brainwave state and they're forcing it up on you. When it comes to someone saying breathe in now, think about this, visualize this,
Hmm.
I think it's a more advanced form. I wouldn't start there if I was
Hmm.
someone who was just starting to meditate. It causes a lot of frustration because you can get lost in their voice or you can get distracted or it just causes you to think a lot. Once you're able to set a foundation of I can clear my mind, I think
Hmm.
that's when it's time to add things on. But the first focus of meditation should be taking away, getting back to a natural state of who we are naturally. Even like trading, when you start trading, it's more of a deduction game, right? What not to do than adding things on. Once you learn your strategy, you don't learn, a ton of other things. You learn what not to do.
Yeah.
With meditation, we're taking away the parts of us that have built up, like we mentioned earlier, from when we were a child, and from habits and things. So we're made in perfection, and the more we can get rid of the baggage that the world has given us, the better we're going to function as a trader and as a person. So two types of meditation, like you said, the binaural beats would be where I would start. The assisted, which I currently like to do with Joe Dispenza. He has a ton of free ones on YouTube where he's
Hmm.
telling you what to visualize and what to breathe.
So you're talking about the
Those are,
morning and evening visualization meditations from Joe
yeah,
Dispenza,
yep,
right? Yeah.
yeah,
The
yeah.
ones
Those are
on
awesome.
YouTube, just for viewers, some of those are edited, so they're
Yeah,
really
yeah,
short or they're not the full thing. So if you're gonna get
right,
it, make sure you go get it from his website because that's what I start
for
off with.
sure.
And
Yeah,
when I purchased
good
them, they
point.
were like double the length. So also be careful like what you're finding on YouTube because sometimes, at least from my like experience, they're either heavily edited or there's some other person trying to word for word use what the other person is talking about, such as Joe Dispenza. Especially with somebody
Yeah.
like Joe, he's so big. People will just consistently like repeat the same information, and you'll find like a 5 minute long meditation that says it's from Joe, but it's not. It's just 5 minutes of one like half hour to an hour long meditation. So
Yeah, yeah, good point. And with his books, I know I have the placebo effect that he wrote. When you get his books, a lot of times meditations come with those, and he gives you access. So
yeah.
definitely go to the source on that. One other thing I want to say on that, just as a caveat, because there's really no harm in listening to somebody, although it may not be the best thing. But with binaural beats, there can be harm. So be careful where you're getting binaural beats on the YouTube. Someone may not be trained in creating frequencies. I've created binaural beats. It's not an easy process, so you don't want to put the wrong brain waves in your brain. It's not like
Mhm.
it's going to have some crazy effect, but you don't want any ill effects on your mind as far as extra stress, tiredness, or anything like that. So yeah, I would always go to great sources and make sure you're vetting the sources on any type of meditation practice.
And do you have any recommendations for binaural beat sources? Because in my past, I've tried to find them, but of course, YouTube is one of the ones that always comes up. And, like you're mentioning, they can actually do some damage. Or sometimes when I'm going to a YouTube one, and by the time I'm finished, I just have a headache. So
Right.
it's like,
Yeah.
do you have any good sources if people want to go out and look more of those other than like HoloSync is one? I'll put the link below on that one. But what
Yeah.
about binaural beats?
Yeah, so HoloSync is a great one. They actually have a free program. I think it's 7 days, and they say if you're not feeling different in 7 days, then you don't have to purchase it. But it's just free. You can get it, no questions asked, no billing information. But also another one is Brain Salon.
Hmm.
I like their technicians. Um, Brain Salon is the product. I'm pretty sure you can find it from there. The company name is eluding me right now. I'm trying to see it, just minimize the screen because I got it saved here on the home desk. Um, this is a demo. Brain Salon is the focus. So I don't want it to come up over this screen, but yeah, if you look up Brain Salon, you'll be able to find that company.
Hmm.
That would be the second one I would recommend for any type of binaural beats.
Yeah, and I'll also put the link below on that. So
Yeah,
when somebody's trying to meditate, one of the problems that I've always had is yawning a lot. And I've looked it up, and a lot of people experience the same problems with meditations and yawning, which for me kind of took me out of the whole like relaxed meditative state. How would people overcome that type of like physical aspect of taking them out, like shaky legs or yawning or something like that? Type of thing. Because like if you're having a thought, let's say I left the oven on, you can kind of push that out of your head maybe and continue
right.
on with the meditation. But if it's something physical, like having shaky legs or yawning, from what I've seen is that a lot of people just can't go back into that type of meditative state.
Yeah. And so the biggest thing about meditation is letting whatever happens be okay. And you have to what I've heard is called love what arises. And so what that means is that you're gonna have these symptoms, which are things that you have no choice but to fight through.
Mhm.
If you're yawning, of course the brain, thinks it's going to sleep. If you have, shaky legs, if you have sweaty palms, it's just a symptom of what you're trying to accomplish, and it's the body fighting back. So literally, it's just hammering at it. You have to, 30 seconds adding a day, a minute adding a day. You really have to fight through some of the things when it comes to the actions that we take on the mental and the spiritual path. So I would just say, just know it's okay. If you're yawning, things like that, if you accept it, this is what happens. So when things arise during meditation, that's just something that starts the conversation. So then we start to say, okay, am I doing this right? Is this okay? And then we have that conversation. But if we just say, you know what, it's fine. I'm just gonna let whatever happens, and we move on from it. We don't have a conversation. We don't get distracted, and we're gonna benefit from it.
So in a way, it's kind of developing that ability to like the Pomodoro technique, where you're kind of just adding more time onto your meditation, and
For
over
sure.
time, maybe that would subside, and you can not yawn or not have shaky legs, or maybe not think that you're leaving the oven on or something like that.
Yeah. And it's taken a long time for us to become who we are. And
Mhm.
so we have to understand that the process of changing is going to be not just as long, but it's going to be a long path when we're talking about making changes.
Yeah. Now, with meditation, do you also do any visualization meditations? I've heard of a lot of traders like S&B Capital. They'll actually talk about how Bella will, have them visualize their trading before or after the trading day. And even with Joe Dispenza, at the end of his nighttime type of meditation, it's about visualization about what you did the day before. Mhm.
So I was in a mastermind group last year with Benjamin Hardy, Dr. Benjamin Hardy, and he has a concept that it's not his concept, but he really promotes it. It's called the future self. And so when we are visualizing the future, it's really priming the way for us to take action, right? We're
Yeah.
sending out energy ahead of us to really help us be open to activities, to make sure our reticular activating system knows what to look for on a daily basis, and it opens up us towards being that person. So a huge difference in visualization is if I said, you know what, I'm going to visualize, counting money, then
Yeah.
that's something that can cause, sometimes depending on your money blueprint, it can cause a counter effect, right? So what we want to do is we want to focus on what we can control. So we focus on the person that we are going to be in that situation. So if I had a scene and I was counting money, I'm going to focus on how I feel in that scene, what I smell in that scene, what I hear in that scene. And I'm
Mhm.
really going to put myself in that scene and really think from that place and not think of that place. So when we're visualizing, we think from the visualization. We don't think of the visualization. If you make that small tweak, you're going to have tons more expectation. I talked about, on the podcast of the 150,000 that I was funded with. When it happened, I had the conversation of telling my friend that I was getting funded so many times that when it happened, it really was anticlimactic. I was
Yeah.
like, oh, this is kind of normal. And so understanding that everything that we have in our life right now feels normal. And
Mhm.
so when we're visualizing things, we need to get it to a point where it feels normal, right? There's not, and we, of course, we want to have gratitude, but it's not like we walk outside to the car we've had for 3 years. We're like, oh, my car. Like that's unrealistic. So when we take that approach to visualizing, we're energetically setting ourselves up for failure. And a lot of times what they call in reality transurfing, a counter effect. And
Yeah.
that's where you're saying, you know what, I need a quick $1,000. The next thing you know, you're 2,000 under, right? Because you
Yeah.
energetically went about it the wrong way. So visualizing is really important, but it's important that we're visualizing who we are in the future. And there's two things. One, it helps us have a strong goal of what to focus on, of things we can control. And then it gives us action steps for today. Because if I'm focusing on, counting $1,000, then it kind of leaves a gap in what I'm doing in between there. But if I'm focusing on being a confident trader, a patient trader, and those are the reasons I'm counting this $1,000, then every day I can work on patience. Every day I can work on merging the gap between who I am now and my future self. So visualization is really important, but we want to make sure that we're not visualizing tangible things and accolades, that we're visualizing the person that we are, and that person is the person who's worthy of those things. So it's just a
Mhm.
slight difference, and it's really putting ourselves in that future picture. And I believe that's a huge difference in the effectiveness of things like the law of attraction or visualization, and even what are those vision boards?
Hello, and welcome to Trading Without Fear.